Hey, hi everyone. Welcome back to CodeTav management. So, in the last lectures, we have discussed about some security hacks and how to secure them. So, four types I have discussed already. So, you can go to the Spring Boot discussions playlist and you can see those videos for better understanding. So, today we are gonna explain about the Spring Security Form login. So the architecture, what is the session flow, that I will mainly discuss. So when you add the Spring security to your project, so it instantly locks down every endpoint and gives you a default login page, right? But how does that login page actually work? Where is it storing your login state? So today we are lifting the hood on Spring Security and we are doing a complete deep dive into form login authentication. So we are gonna look at what stateful authentication actually means, trace the exact internal filter chain architecture, and write the code to move our users from basic in memory to a real database. So most importantly, like I will show you exactly why modern microservices hate form login and when you should actually use it. So form login is the default mechanism in Spring Boot and it is entirely stateful, right? So what does that mean? So it means the server has a memory. When you submit your username and password, Spring validates them and creates HTTP session in the server's RAM. So it then hands your browser a VIP pass, which is called the JSESSIONID cookie. So for every request you make after that, you don't send your password, you just send the cookie and the server checks its memory, sees your session is active and lets you in. And if the server restarts or the session expires, that memory is wiped out and you have to relog in. Okay. So what is form login authentication? I have explained. And stateful, what does this stateful means? Like the server maintains user authentication state using an HTTP session. So once the user is authenticated, they don't need to send username or password every request. Instead, the browser sends only JSessionID. That is the main key. Okay. And this JSessionID will represent the user session. So see the high level flow. User submits login form with username and password. Spring Security validates credentials. Server creates an HTTP session. Server returns a set cookie JSON JSON ID 123. Browser stores that cookie. Now for every next request, cookie is JSON ID equals to 123. Server validates the session and authorizes the user. What are the default URLs in Spring Security? So for the login is /login, logout is /logout. So these come out of the box with Spring Boot security. Now I will tell you, like when you hit that login URL, so your request goes through an intense security checkpoint, which is called the security filter chain. So here it is the exact flow you need to memorize. That is the internal architecture. So like when login is called, this chain will be executed. First of all, this security filter chain that I have told you, that when you hit the login URL, your request will go through an intense security checkpoint, and that security checkpoint is known as the security filter chain. And then it will come as username password authentication filter. So it basically what it does, so it basically intercepts your login request. Next is authentication manager. So the boss, that like this authentication manager is the boss. Okay, so like that basically coordinates the authentication process. And next come comes the provider manager and the DAO authentication provider. So provider manager and DAO authentication provider, that is the worker that actually checks the database. So through your authentication manager, you come under the authentication process, and then provider manager and DAO authentication provider, they actually works for to for checking the authentication from the database. Next come as user details service. So that is basically the interface that loads the user by username, then password encoder. So this tool, it will hash your password, and it will compare safely. So once this chain passes, then Spring creates the authentication object, and it will be stored in the security context. And then that context safely come into your HTTP session, right? So what happens during the first login? So at this point, no session exists, only user exists, and Spring performs hash incoming the password and load user from in memory or DB or LDAP, and then comparison will be happened with the hashed password. Then it will create the authentication object. It will store in the security context and store the security context inside the HTTP session. Next is default user creation when you add this dependency. So like the dependencies from the Spring Boot, Spring Framework boot, like from the Spring Boot, you will have Spring Boot starter, like how you have used the Spring Boot starter JPA or others. In the same way, we have the Spring Boot starter security as the artifact ID. Whenever you will add this dependency, Spring automatically creates the by default username as the user, then randomly generated password, and those will be for dev environments. You can override this in separate things, like in application properties or custom in memory user details manager. Okay, those things you can use. But see, like whenever, like by default the username is user and password is randomly generated, so every restart, whenever you will restart, then new random password will be generated, and this is controlled by security properties, user details service auto configuration, and in memory user details manager. Okay, so remember these three things. So whenever this password is generated, and those are being controlled by security properties, user details service auto configuration, and in memory user details manager, right? So how you can control the user creation, that are controlled by these three. Like first one is application properties. Like mainly you will for the day we can use these two ways. The first one is this that properties, security properties you can say, and the second one is in memory user details manager. Okay, and in production also I will show you like how to handle that. So first one is application properties or application YAML. So for dev only, suppose you will set the username there, like in the Spring security username as CodeTav, suppose, then password, but not recommended in production. In for the production, you never set the usernames or password into your application properties. Then next way is custom in memory user details manager. So there you can create one bin like public in memory user details manager, that user details service. So there, suppose user with username, some name and dot password, then noop, then 12345. I will tell you what is noop. Then roles user build, then return new in memory user details manager. So what is noop? So Spring uses a delegating password encoder. So it looks at the prefix to know how to verify the password. So noop means plain text. So in production, this will look like uh, some bcrypt, okay, some bcrypt, and then 1234 will become some random characters or numbers. Okay, so to move to production, you never use in memory. You store the users in a database, has the passwords with bcrypt, and implement the user detail service interface so Spring knows how to find them. So why nope? I have told you like Spring uses the delegating password encoder and stored password from that ID encoded password. Like examples, when you will use the this noop 12345, that will become like this, that bcrypt, then something like that. So Spring checks ID and routes to correct encoder. So see the password encoder flow. So delegating password encoder, then detect the bcrypt, then bcrypt password encoder, then has incoming password, and it will compare. So that's the process. See the flow. It is very much important. Like for your security or something, that is very much important. So like it will first check the delegating password encoder. It will detect the bcrypt, then bcrypt password encoder, then has incoming password, then compare. Then recommended is store users in database. That is the production approach that I told. So store the users in DB, then has the password using bcrypt and implement the user detail service. So for implementing this, see the entity first. So this public class user auth entity, which is implementing the user details. And there you have the models of like username, password, and role. And service will your user auth service will implement that user detail service. Okay, so there you can do the like public user details and then load user by username, string username, and return repo dot find by username. So that actually fetch from the DB, from DB. Okay, so allow the register API without login. So by default, every endpoint is authenticated. So auth/register must be allowed. So http dot authorize http request dot request matchers. Then there you can pass your endpoints, and dot permit all means it will permit with any kind of endpoint with this one. Dot any request that I told, like any request with this endpoint will be authenticated. Okay, so industry standard practice it is actually. Next is session lifecycle. So login means session created, idle means session expires, request means session refreshed, invalid means redirect to login. So default time to leave is 30 minutes and configurable via server.servlet.session.timed out. You can set it as 1 minute or like that. So store sessions in database. That is the distributed systems. So you have to add the dependency of Spring Session JDBC, and when you will add this dependency, Spring creates the Spring Session table. And now sessions are shared across servers. It is persisted and scalable. So what is the authorization flow? Authentication flow, I have told you the password authentication flow, like password encoder flow that I have told you, like authenticate it. Like whenever password will be matched, then the user will be authenticated, right? So after that, authorization flow. That is the authorization flow. So authentication is not the authorization. Like after authentication, it will come under the authorization filter and it will check the required role. And then when it is check the required role, like at that point of time, it will compare with security context. Like it is like it will only able to read or read and write or only write those things or admin access those things. So like example, authorize HTTP request dot request matchers slash users dot has role user. So Spring internally checks role underscore users. So session creation policies, like if required, then create only when needed. That is the default. Always means it always create the session. Never means never create but use if exists. And stateless is no session at all. So JWT has no session. So when there will be no session, then your security will be higher. Okay. Now I will tell you about how to control the session, means limit the session per user. So from the HTTP session management, we can have the maximum session we can set like 1 to 5 or 10 like that. Maximum session prevents login, true, which prevents same user login in multiple browsers. So that's the thing like that, like because form login relies on sessions, right? So we need to secure them. What if a user logs from three different computers? You can restrict that easily. How you can restrict that easily? That you can set here maximum session one. So when suppose when from one computer, suppose when your one session is active with one user, then from another computer it cannot be activated. It will show you that suppose some for some banking applications or like that, you already have seen like when you want to do the net banking or like that, suppose you logged in via mobile and then you trying to log in from your computer, like then from computer it will show you that you are already logged in from another device. So that is being handled by this only. So when you will logged out from your mobile device, then only you can log in from your computer. Okay, so that is the massive scalability problem. If you deploy 5 instances of your Spring Boot app behind load balancer and user A login into the server one, and their session is stuck on the server one only. If their next request hits the server two, then they are logged out. So to fix this, you must store the session in a centralized database, right? Using Spring Session JDBC or Redis. Now your sessions are shared across servers. So that's why for security purpose, we can use that for banking applications or like that. But when you will use one OTT platform or something, then that cannot be done, right? So that's why you have the premium option, some mid-level option or some basic option. So when you subscribe for the basic option, then it is also added that you can log in via mobile only. When it is the mid-level, suppose it is like that one mobile with two other devices. When premium, then it is like five devices. So when you subscribe to your premium, then from the 5 devices you can log in into the OTT platform, and 5 different users, like 5 different people with one user authentication and authorization, they can see 5 different things from their 5 different devices, like one from TV, two from laptops, two from mobile, like that, right? So at that point of time, when suppose OTT platform type of login is required, then you need to do any you need to do via distributed manner, right? But whenever some banking applications are like that, then this type of things will be okay, like maximum session is one or like that. Okay, so to fix this, you must store the session in a centralized database using Spring Session JDBC or Redis. Now your sessions are shared across servers. So I will tell you some disadvantages of form login. So first of all, the CSRF fix. Like if form login is so easy, Why don't we use it for everywhere? So first one is CSRF risk. So because browsers auto attach cookies, you are vulnerable to cross-site request forgery. Like I have told in the last lecture, like what is the CSRF? So suppose you have already logged in. So your credentials are stored in the session. So if a hacker will send you one URL like for hacking, so if you will click on that, then it will fetch your cookies. Like when you are logged in, then your credential will be saved in cookies and stored in a session. Like in a session, it will stored in a form of cookies. So if you will again at that point of active session, if you will log in some vulnerable sites, then it will fetch that cookies and able to log in that, and you will be hijacked. Okay, so Spring enables a CSRF by default and don't disable. So session hijacking, that is the that's one big problem. Like if attacker steals the JSON ID, they become you, and the site will unable to track. So like if they will pay from your bank account, from your bank account your money will be lost, right? So this JSON ID is JSession ID is very much crucial. That is the key. Okay, so if it will be shared, then it will be a big problem. Then scalability cost. Okay, so like storing the sessions in Redis or a DB, that adds the latency, like network latency. There will be some memory and infrastructural cost as well. So uh, you can see like this depreciation store, Redis, cache, that will increase the latency memory cost. And that is not suitable for APIs. Like mobile and microservices prefer basically this JWT, OAuth2, stateless auth. Okay. So for mobile apps or APIs, that is not suitable. But what are the use cases where you can use the form login? So form login is perfect for traditional server rendered web apps and admin panels. So it is terrible for microservices and public REST APIs. So here I have added like admin panels, banking portals, you can use that. But for microservices, mobile apps and REST APIs, it is not recommendable. And you don't need to use that. So some common interview questions and answers are also discussed, like why form login is stateful. So because it relies on the server maintaining an HTTP session. So authentication state is stored on the server using the HTTP session. So as the authentication state is stored on the server using the HTTP session, that's why your form login is stateful. Now, where is authentication object stored? So that also I've discussed, like authentication object created and it is stored in the HTTP session. Then from HTTP session, security context, and from security context, the authentication process will be done. Now, why JWT is more scalable than sessions? Because JWT, there is no server memory, no DB lookup, and that's why it is stateless. What happens if session expires? You need to re-authenticate. Why CSRF is enabled by default? Because form login uses cookies and that is vulnerable. Now, that is a very important question. Like, what is the difference between the authentication and authorizations? In many interviews, these questions come up. Like, authentication means who are you? Like for login, and authorization means you you already are authenticated. After authentication, what can you access? So it gives you the permission. So authentication is done via the username and passwords. Authorization is done via roles. Got it? Like you have the key for entering into a flat. 2 BHK flat. Okay, and in 2 BHK flat, one secure room is there that has another key, and one common room is there. Okay, so now you entered in a flat through a key, so that initial key is for your authentication, like you are authenticated to enter into a flat. But there, suppose one secure room is there where the owner's secure personal things are there, and that key only it is present inside like some uh, secure place, and owner only know about that. Okay, so you are not authorized to enter that room. You are authorized to enter in the common room, common bathroom, common kitchen, but you are not authorized to enter that room. Okay, so you are only the user of that flat, but owner is the admin of that flat. Owner can access all the rooms. Okay, so those are the roles specifically, okay, in common terms. So in summary, form login authentication is simple, powerful, secure if used correctly, but it is not designed for modern distributed systems. That's why in the modern systems you will not see these things. So use it for traditional web apps, admin dashboard, server rendered UIs, and avoid it for mobile apps, microservices, public APIs. So form login is perfect for human users, and JWT is perfect for machine to machine systems. Okay, so that's all. So if this helped you finally understand the Spring security under the hood, so hit the like button, subscribe to CodeTav Management, and I will see you in the next one. Till then, stay tuned. Bye.